Tonight on Creeps and Geeks, join us as we discuss the legends of the Bigfoot.
Hi, welcome to Creeps and Geeks.
So in today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about Bigfoot, and I'm going to share a couple stories that I've looked into, and I'm going to start with some Bigfoot reports. They're online. There's the Bigfoot Researchers Organization, and they have a list of all the reports of Bigfoot in the U.S., and I found there's roughly 5,426, I might be a little off on my numbers, but reports in the U.S. of Bigfoot. And of course, Washington has the highest number with 658. And the oldest report that I could find was in 1941, and that was in Yakima. And the newest report is from December 2018, which is also in Yakima. And some of their reports they're not like all sightings. There's different classes like A, B, C class, and some of them are noises, rocks being thrown at campers. Like it's a whole lot of different stuff, and then some of them are sightings. And normally when we talk about Bigfoot, he's described as being, or she, black and brown or reddish fur, up to 9 foot tall, ape-like, walking on hind legs. So that's very much like an ape. That's when you think of an ape-like creature, that's it. That's about it.
Yeah.
So I actually found this old, it was in like the Yale online library, and it's this book that this naturalist from Mexico, his name is Jose Mariano Mozinho Suarez de Figueroa. He was a
Nailed it.
He was a naturalist from Mexico on a scientific expedition with the viceroy from Spain, and they wanted to document the inhabitants of Northern California, aka the Nootka Indians. This is in 1792, and he wrote this book about all of the things that they encountered while they were there. And this naturalist guy, when he talked to the Nootka Indians, they apparently described this creature, human thing called a matlog. That's the name that they gave it. Matlog, yeah. I don't know why it's called a matlog, but
it's a pretty cool name.
From the book, and this is translated from Spanish, he has this excerpt from it that says, "I do not know what to say about a matlog, a resident of the mountains, who fills everyone with unspeakable dread. They describe it as having a monstrous body covered in all manner of rigid black bristles, with a head similar to a human's, but with larger, sharper, and stronger fangs than a bear's, very long arms, with its fingers and toes armed with long and curved claws. Its screams alone, they say, can topple anyone who hears them, and it can shatter any unfortunate body into 1,000 pieces in a single blow. I presume that the history of the matlog has the same basis as the creation myth of which I have just spoken, or that members of the tribe received word long ago that these entities owe their existence to demons." So that was basically his take on what the Nootka Indians described as the matlog and how they described it. Now, as far as them describing it as like a god or like a spirit, it's not really clear, or if it was an actual person. But there's another story that I found, and it was about a trapper in 1928. Nootka Indians come to play once again, and it's a story of this guy called
Oh, here we go.
McCallett Harry. I think it's McCallett.
Let's just call him Harry.
Okay, well, Harry, the trapper. So he lived with the Nootka Indians. It's hard to say if he was one. I think he was. And the rest of the tribe would not go out into the woods alone because they knew what was out there. But Harry was like, nah, I'm gonna go out there and, trap some stuff and hunt some stuff and, do things like that. And so he went to do this, and he canoed, upriver, miles and miles away from the tribe, until he found a little spot to place his canoe. And then I think he hiked up another couple miles and then made camp. And then he went to start setting up traps and stuff, and he decided to call it a night. And while he was sleeping, he claimed that this thing came and basically kidnapped him and carried him. So this is a full-grown man. Carried him all the way to, like, several miles away to this Bigfoot's, is what I guess it is, to its campsite, where there were a bunch of other Bigfoots, big and small, male, female.
A whole village of
it was basically
big feet.
Yeah, and I'm unclear on whether it's Bigfoots or Big Feets. That's a whole
Bigfoots.
Is it Bigfoots or Big Feet?
Probably Bigfoots.
I don't know. And they kind of just, like, poked around at him. He was afraid that they were going to eat him because there was, like, a bunch of bones around the campfire that they had or something. He's like, oh, God, I'm about to get eaten. And, but they really just, like, poked around at him and, tugging on his underoos, like, what is this? You know what I mean?
Tugging on his underwear.
Yeah, like long underwear, like long johns. They were like, what is this? Why is your skin so flappy? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
where's your hair?
Yeah,
where's all your hair at?
Yeah, exactly. Where's all your hair at? Like, what's wrong with
You're
you?
a hairless one of me.
Yeah. And so, and nothing really happened to him. Like, none of them, like, did anything to him. They just kind of hung out, and then daylight broke, and then he realized that a bunch of them were gone from the campsite. There was, like, barely any of them there. And so he was like, you know what? I'm going to book it. So he just straight up ran. He ran towards where he thought his campsite was, and he straight up ran, like, miles and miles away. Like, he ran straight to his canoe, basically. He, like, completely bypassed his camp, and he was like, I'm just going, like, straight up, like, apocalypto style.
He's a scared man.
Yeah. So he made it to his canoe, and he canoed back to the Nootka tribe area, where he found a Catholic missionary, of course, that was there. And he ended up, he was obviously traumatized by the situation, and he ended up telling the Catholic missionary, and then that's kind of how it got passed down. I also wanted to touch on the Patterson-Gimlin film from 1967, because that's a huge part of Bigfoot lore, and especially when it comes to proving the existence of Bigfoot. And it's just really brief. So I read that they had actually set out to, like, make a documentary of Bigfoot, of Sasquatch, whatever. And apparently there had been some other documentaries that had come out about Bigfoot before they even made anything. So and there's a lot of stuff surrounding that video.
That whole footage has been, like, back and forth.
It really has.
Whether or not it's real or if it's fake, or at one point in time they were saying that you could tell it was just a guy in a suit.
Yeah.
And now it's, actual footage of Bigfoot,
Yeah, and it's gone through several of people saying, like, as, like, part of confessions of, like, oh, it's not real because I did this, or it's not real because I did this. But it's like, oh, well, are they saying that because they had different motives, or because it was actually not real? Like, are they trying to get money and trying to say this? So it's really hard to say. But if it was real, I think that it would be fairly decent evidence compared to a lot of the other films that you see.
I mean, a lot of the other films that I've seen are like, did you blink and you miss it?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Oh, did you see that shadow back there?
Yeah.
Like,
or they're so far off.
I saw something.
Yeah.
I mean, to say it was a Bigfoot is a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
I can get on board with there being a Bigfoot or a population of Bigfoots, but I would think we have found something by now.
Yeah, besides the foot casts. I guess, which
can be anything.
Yeah, and those go back and forth too. Like, oh, it has foot ridges, and then but the toes don't lay this way like a normal ape would or a normal human foot would.
Right.
And there's plenty of people who have said, yeah, I make these Bigfoot things that I attach to my feet just to mess around with people.
Yeah.
Which is kind of ridiculous that somebody goes out of their way.
With little cast moldings on their feet like Harry and the Hendersons.
Yeah, exactly. So another thing I wanted to touch on is the fact that there are a lot of Native American stories about Bigfoot or some kind of creature that is like Bigfoot. And some of them refer to them as like one of the people, like one of the tribe, but separate somehow, or like kind of like a spirit, or some of them refer to them as actual like monsters and creatures. And some of those and they have different names for them. There's Sasquatch, Skookum, Siatko, Night People, Stick Indians. I mean, there's plenty more. There's tons of them. In many of the stories, it's either that they are benevolent and they're nice and gentle, or they are malevolent, cannibalistic, they steal children, they rape women, all of that kind of stuff. And so I wanted to also talk about the story that Teddy Roosevelt has in his book, The Wilderness Hunter, and it's based off of the story that was told to him by a man named Bowman that who was a trapper. And Roosevelt describes this man as like a grizzled mountain guy. He's just basically super serious, and he's not like a joking kind of guy. He wouldn't tell this kind of story just for the heck of it. And so this guy Bowman, he and a fellow trapper go out into the woods in Idaho, and they're in the Bitterroot Mountains, and this is somewhere between Idaho and Montana. And they go up there and they set up camp next to a stream. And when they do this, they go out to set up traps, and when they come back, their camp is just completely messed up. Like something has been going through it, like a bear does. A lot of the times you hear about it. And they're just kind of like, oh, well, that's weird. And they put everything back in order, and it's whatever. And then that night, Bowman, his fellow trapper, kind of ends up checking out the tracks a little bit better, and he notices that they're really weird. It looks like whatever went through their camp was up on two legs, and he just kind of keeps on looking at them and is like, oh, okay, well, that's just really weird. It looks kind of like bear tracks, but it's walking on two legs, but it doesn't really look like a bear's tracks. It could
still be a bear.
Yeah, exactly. So during that night, after their camp gets trashed, they start to hear noises, and one of the men actually like shoots into the woods where they hear the noises because they think it's a bear or something like that could possibly, kill them. And they wake up the next morning and they're just kind of like, oh yeah, that was weird. They go out and check on their traps, set them up, do whatever it is they do. They come back and their campsite is messed up again, which is, really annoying. And so they set everything back up again, and whenever they go to lay down and go to sleep and everything, they can hear stuff across the stream that they're camped at. And they know that there's this big giant thing over there because it keeps on cracking branches and doing all of this stuff over there. And so kind of like they're a little bit shaken by it, and they know that that thing is over there, and they just kind of sit up all night kind of watching and waiting, and they don't get any sleep. So the next morning they're like, okay, we have to get out of here because there's something around here, whether it's a bear or whatever, is probably dangerous. And so they decide to get out of there. So Bowman actually says, hey, I'll volunteer to go and get all of the traps, and then you can go ahead and pack up, and then we'll get out of here. So Bowman goes and gets whatever's in the traps, which actually there were some beaver in the traps, which is what they were trapping, and he has to skin them and do all of that stuff, which takes a lot of time during the day, because there were several in the traps. So he's walking back, and he notices that it's really quiet around the forest and the woods, and he just kind of gets this eerie feeling, and while he's walking back, and he starts to lose daylight. And so he gets back and he sees that everything is packed up and ready to go, but he doesn't see his fellow trapper. And then he realizes as he's looking around that he is actually dead. He sees his body. And it looks as if his neck has been snapped and something has bit into his neck. Like, he can see 2 large fang marks in his neck, but he's not like disemboweled or anything, like a
vampire Bigfoot.
Basically, he's not like disemboweled or like eaten alive or anything like that. That's all it is. He also says that it looks like he had been thrown around or something because he's all dirty, and it looks like he's been thrown around like a rag doll, basically. And so when he sees that, he's like, okay, I gotta get the heck out of here. So he just kind of goes, and he leaves everything behind. And he basically runs down the mountain and goes back to where their horses or mules or whatever were grazing, and he just goes. And basically that's that. And so he never actually saw anything, but it was enough to scare the crap out of him.
Right. And this isn't the type of guy that would just get scared by anything.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this is a guy who's been in the mountains all his life, basically. My grandma actually claimed to have seen a Bigfoot when she was a child. She said it was when she was on the school bus. On the way to school, she had actually seen Bigfoot. Now, that's all she really said. She didn't really describe it or anything. That's all she said was that, oh yeah, I saw Bigfoot when I was on the bus.
Right.
But I was just kind of like, okay, Grandma, yeah, you saw Bigfoot.
Right.
I also had a cousin who, in Washington State, the area around where she grew up, there's also a reservation. And a lot of the kids that she went to school with were from the reservation. And so she heard a lot of stories that were like Bigfoot stories. It may not have been like Bigfoot, but it was something that was weird. And the main one that sticks out to me was stick Indians. And she told these stories whenever we would go camping that would kind of freak us out about stick Indians. Like, they were attracted to burning hair, and they could disappear into the trees. Like, they could just...
Like Harry and the Hendersons.
Yes, exactly. Like, they could just go behind a tree and disappear, and they would come out at night and they would scream and howl and make these weird noises. And it may have just been to just kind of freak us out, but I don't know. Those stories always stuck with me because they were just so weird, and it was just like, I've never heard of a stick Indian before, so it's just something that was always weird to me. And that's gonna just about wrap up this episode about Bigfoot. That's gonna be about everything that we have so far.
I'm sure we'll have more episodes on Bigfoot in the future. Mm-hmm. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give us a like. Be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you thought.
Yeah.
And until next time, we'll see you in the next video.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.